Game changers, game changers. Welcome back to another episode of At the Desk with Dr. Qua, the podcast where transformation begins with conversation. Today, we are exploring how schools can reimagine the ways they support scholars beyond the classroom walls, using external resources to supplement and enhance learning for those who need it most. I'm honored to be joined by Dr. Tina Powell, owner and CEO of Reimagine Now, an educational consulting firm that partners with districts to build powerful systems for curriculum, instruction, assessment, and data. Dr. Powell's career journey is both inspiring and impactful. From mathematics teacher to director of STEM education, and later assistant superintendent of innovation and technology. In 2017, she co-founded the STEM Innovation Academy of the Oranges, which is now ranked among the top 300 high schools nationally and in the top 15 across New Jersey. She holds degrees in elementary education, mathematics, educational administration, and an executive doctorate in K-12 leadership. Beyond her leadership work, Dr. Powell is also a published scholar and artist, whose philosophy is beautifully captured in her favorite quote, "Let the beauty we love be what we do." Today, she brings her deep expertise and creative vision to a conversation on building strong, equitable systems of external support that meet the needs of all scholars. Dr. Powell, welcome to the desk.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Okay, so let's see. Now, when we talk about external support for scholars, what does that really mean
Mhm.
in the context of schools?
External support. Within your respective schools, you have a wide range of supports, certificated staff, you have your administrators, teachers, your paraprofessionals, and other support systems.
Mm-hmm.
Those are all concentrated supports that offer what they offer, right?
Right.
But beyond that, school districts have the ability to also contract in
Mm-hmm.
additional support. So we're definitely in 21st century where things, technologies, and information, it's just rapidly transforming education.
Right.
And sometimes all of those experts within your building,
Mm-hmm.
um, their expertise may get to a certain point where you need some additional supports to be brought in from the outside. So external supports to me are those systems that kind of wrap around your school, um, that you can contract out and then just like grow your internal systems because you have those external supports.
Awesome. So let's dig into how schools can figure out when and where those supports are needed most.
Hmm.
When and where are those supports needed most?
That's the question, right?
That's the million dollar question.
Yeah, had to think it through a little bit. One thing that I definitely encourage school systems and districts to do is to reference their data.
Okay.
A lot of the work that I am presently doing, it was in line with the state testing data, and then we just go deeper from there. So, um, generally speaking, doing deep dives into data, that may be something that teachers and administrators, that may not be their strong suit.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're able to look at data a little bit more topically,
Right.
but sometimes you need folks who can go deep and also have the time, to go
Mm-hmm.
deeper. So folks who can triangulate the data, pull together different data sources and look at trends across, and then just make just deep recommendations for change. So when the data warrants, additional supports, then that's
Mm-hmm.
usually where those external supports can come in, and that does happen. That does happen often. That does happen often. I was just engaged with in a conversation today with a school district where we looked super close at the data, and it was exciting. By the time we peeled back all the layers of the data,
Uh-huh.
and it was data that I had crunched, like by the time we pulled back all those layers, the room was abuzz with conversations around, these are some things that we can do. And it went beyond your typical after school programs. They were talking
Mm-hmm.
about like big changes, and even granular changes, but things that would be in response to that data. So a lot of times that external component gets introduced when your
Hmm.
data is dictating that. Yeah.
So when you do that deep dive, right?
Mhm.
How how does that help schools determine which scholar population may require additional support beyond classroom instruction?
Okay, that's a great one. That's a great one. So I'm thinking about actual case scenarios, right?
Uh huh.
So in District A, let's say,
Okay.
in District A, their data spoke to their tier 2 students. So they're students who were maybe about one grade level below level, and
Mm-hmm.
that data prompted them to seek tutoring services. So the state of New Jersey, post COVID,
Mm.
allowed school districts to be able to bring in reputable tutoring services and things like that. So
Right.
this district in particular, they in their second year, they wanted to try it on their own, where they
Okay.
have more control over that tutoring space. And so I was able to attach to that. I'm not a tutoring vendor, I work more with like data systems, but um, they brought me in to help support and align their vision for tutoring. So that
Right.
was one way we responded to that data and
Mm-hmm.
brought in some external supports. And this happens during the school day. This happens
Mm.
during the school day. So
Right.
that's great.
So
So again, these students are about a grade level below.
so structuring this around the school day, can you just kind of
Mhm.
share with us what that would look like? Because that means scheduling becomes
Yeah,
a serious element that needs to be factored into being able to, pull these scholars to facilitate
absolutely.
this tutoring. How
Yeah,
did
the
that? How
schedule
did
is
that? Yeah.
that schedules everything. That's very insightful. That schedules everything. The first part of that work was identifying the students. So
Mm-hmm.
developing a framework to identify the students. So in that case, we used 3 different data points for students,
Okay.
and these were scholars in grades 3 and 4. And then we know that we can't service all of the students, so then prioritizing the students based on need.
Mm-hmm.
And so at each site in this particular district, at each site, we said, okay, we'll offer tutoring services to students, 60 students across grades 3 and 4.
Okay.
And the next part of that was the schedule. So
Mm.
here's a schedule. And, I gave parameters to the principals. So, and also side by side working with them to develop their
Mm-hmm.
schedules. So the quick and easy answer to that is the scholars saw the tutors two
Mm-hmm.
days per week,
Okay.
40 minutes each time. By the time tutoring ended, we wanted every scholar to have 40 sessions.
Okay.
Tutoring, right? Tutoring picks up in October, and we ended it right before state testing. So we were able to accomplish those 40 sessions for all of those 60 students per site. And so, in terms of structuring that schedule, we didn't want to pull them out of their core math class or their core ELA class. So we treated the tutoring as a special subject like art, music, gym,
Right. Right. Okay.
And so tutoring was that extra period where we were able to pull students without interrupting their core instruction. So it was great. It was great.
Nice.
And good
Nice.
results on top of that. Really good
Really.
results on top.
Really. So
Yeah.
in the process, I know you say you work side by side with the leadership, in addition
Hmm.
to the practitioners, those who are on the ground, in the game.
Hmm.
Once those
Yeah.
needs are identified, the next big question is always what supports actually work, right? So
Hmm.
identifying the tutoring, I guess, agency, company, right? Um,
Hmm.
the focus is on literacy and math, I think, always, because those are the
Yeah.
tested
Always. That's
content
tested.
outside of science,
Yeah.
right? So once that's determined and you get this going, what does it look like, feel like, sound like, right, within the instructional environment? Because I hear voices, that oftentimes that so and so is missing my class, but the schedule structure, I think, helps eliminate some of those complaints. right?
Yeah.
So to
Mm-hmm.
that end, what was it like once things kicked off? Well,
Mm-hmm.
I guess what I'm trying to get at is on at the onset when you initially began. Okay, we're going to start in October, mind you. September, the kids have been somewhere else. What was the climate and culture of the school like with scholars being pulled on a daily basis, basically? Because you have a set of scholars who go on day one and a set that goes on day two, correct? Something along
Right.
those lines,
Right.
right? So what
Right.
was
Right.
that? What was that like when the
Yeah.
implementation kicked in?
So again, that's something good to take note of, just how the schools received this new initiative. So
Mm-hmm.
that was part of the reason we didn't start in September. We
Okay.
allowed the school time to just
Okay.
open, you know, and for the teachers to get to know their students and for the teachers to get their routines in place. And then we
Mm.
started interacting with the parents even. So here are the reasons that we'd like for your child to be a part of this experience.
Mm-hmm.
With your approval, you know, we'd like to have this additional resource to support your child. So we had the parent buy-in as well. Teachers, a lot of times, they want to make sure that, you know, they love and own their students. You know what I mean? Like they take pride in, these are my students. So
Possessive.
we like,
Possessive.
they are. We like that investment, right? We like that investment. And so we also made sure that the curriculum that was used in tutoring,
Mm-hmm.
it supported the curriculum used in the classroom. So it was a reinforcement, and we also um, made sure that the teachers understood that too, and the
Mm-hmm.
administrators understood that. And so yeah, it was really just making sure that we aligned everything that happened in that tutoring space to what's happening in the classroom. Um, yeah, so that was a main part of it, just making sure that we didn't start too early, you know, where it would become like disruptive, you know, when you're trying to implement those new systems. And then and one more thing too, which is nice. The students are in rotations
Mm.
within that tutoring space, and so they are getting three aspects of instruction. So in math, for instance, they're getting a good dose of measurement, data, and geometry. And those
Mm-hmm.
are always areas that students score low on because that's
Right.
usually not taught to the year. So we brought that in a little earlier in the year so that by the time
Nice.
the teachers at the end of the year, it was something that the students had familiarity with.
Oh, that's
Um,
awesome.
yeah, yeah.
So one of the things that I'm loving about the process, oftentimes I think districts tend to, oh, I like this program. We're just gonna get it and plug it in, right? There's no
Mm,
real training. There's no real discussion at
mm,
times, even about
mm,
the program in and of itself, or we just
yeah.
do a small sampling of folks and think, yeah, they liked it, so therefore everybody should love it, and then we go full scale, and
Hmm.
the challenge is that they don't the support for its continuity is short lived. And
Hmm. Hmm.
practitioners within the instructional setting is like, I really don't understand this program, so therefore I'm going to do what I need to do to get my kids ready, and
Mm,
kind of, marginalize whatever this program might be. So, in that respect, what would be your advice to districts, to
mm,
school leadership on site who want to bring in programs, right? Because I feel like sometimes we just jump into, oh, I like, this kind of math or that kind of language arts. Ooh, that's nice. It looks good, bells and whistles. We spent thousands of dollars getting it in, and the stuff ends up
hmm.
sitting on the shelf. So, what would be a good
Mm,
advice to give not only district leaders in terms of superintendents and what have you, or curriculum
mm,
directors or supervisors, or whatever the case might be, who are responsible for bringing programs in? What would be the advice
mm.
in terms of being methodical and making sure that if we bring this program in,
Yeah.
we have to have some stick to itiveness with it, right, and support it through
Mm-hmm.
the end. Because I know during my time, we got programs that, yeah, year one, you got all the support you want. You got sick of the support, right? Because it was a lot of
Yeah.
support. By year two, it's like, okay, what we doing? Yeah, about that. It's almost like people just moved on. So, advice
Mm-hmm.
that will help schools not waste money, one, on
Yeah.
programs that
Yeah.
they're not going to necessarily support.
Yeah. So I'm hearing sustainability in that,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm also hearing vetting. And so I would definitely advise school leaders to know the background of the vendors that you're bringing in. You
Mm.
know, for me in particular, I've walked the walk of a teacher. I've walked the walk of administrators, all the way up through assistant superintendent. I have written curriculum. I've written assessments. In opening the STEM school, there was quite a bit of program alignment. I found the resources and curated resource and wrote the resources for that school. So having a vendor, right? And vendor's not a bad word, but having a vendor that has a solid background,
Mm-hmm.
who's, I've been a teacher, so I have a healthy respect and reverence for teaching. So I
Absolutely.
want things that I put in, I want to see those things work. I also have connected school districts to other vendors and partners as well, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm only connecting them because I believe in them. I don't make any money off of these connections. Um, these are folks where I'm like, I believe in their services and their support.
Right.
And so that's one. The second is and this is a reality. If a vendor is worth um you know if they're worth it, right? Usually they're not trying to live with you for beyond 3 to 5 years.
Mm.
So
Okay.
in the time that I am supporting school districts, I'm also trying to build capacity so
Absolutely.
that by the end of year 3, let's say, I've strengthened the supervisors that I work closely with, or I've strengthened the principals with whom I work with. So the idea is to really not to just put some things in place and go, but to
Mm.
just make sure that those systems continue to get stronger and then they reinforce themselves. So even with the tutoring in my first year, Tina was providing oversight. I'm going to the schools and checking in on the evaluating them. And then it got to a point where I said, you know what? Let me really start enlisting the support of the assistant principals. And they were game. They loved it.
Right.
I showed how to evaluate tutors and things like that. So um, again, working closely and building relationships with the staff,
Yeah.
it allows me to build that capacity, and then I can slowly kind of gradually release, from those services. And it's all in love. Like it's not like, it's something that you're supposed to do. So I
But
do want to build stronger systems. It's not just about, always being that person who's leading those conversations.
I think that's a valid and admirable component with respect to going in,
Hmm.
showing them how things should be done, or what should be done based on what the data is presenting,
Hmm.
helping build that capacity. And I think that's a component that is oftentimes overlooked, um,
Yeah.
with respect to just, because everything has to be instantaneous and happen quickly. We tend to overlook that capacity building component and identifying practitioners who can step up and be able to stand in our stead to make sure that what needs to be done is being done with fidelity. And I think
Absolutely.
that's a great way to look at it. That graduate release, as it's supposed to be in the classroom, right? As
Hmm.
right, graduate release, we have to do that
Hmm.
within the structure of leadership as well. Um,
Hmm.
Based on your experience, which supports best supplement classroom instruction versus address social emotional or behavioral needs? You didn't know
Oh,
you were
that's a
going to
tough
take a
one.
quiz today, right? I told you it was going
I
to
know.
be
I didn't know. I didn't know. I didn't know. I
just a
didn't
little
know.
bit of a
So,
quiz, just a little something, something.
I mean, my focus is definitely more on the curriculum side,
Uh-huh.
but I still believe that you can accomplish those social emotional supports through curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
So there is nothing more showing more care
Mm-hmm.
for a child than making sure that we know their academic needs.
Right.
We're wrapping supports around those academic needs. So in terms of the resource, it's really the most appropriate resource for students. And another conversation, I actually had to continue it after this call. We started looking super specifically at specific standards that our
Mm-hmm.
students struggle with, as well as those where they do well, right? And on this particular call, this superintendent said, "How do our multilingual learners do on those standards as well?" Like it's one thing just to speak to the general population of
Mm.
students, right?
Mm.
But a bit deeper, are there certain standards that our MLs need more supports in?
Right.
And that's the easy answer of yeah, of and not a it's not an obvious answer. The data told us for certain that ELA tends to be a more struggle area as opposed
Language,
to the
because
math.
of the language, that's always been the case, right? That language component is
Yeah,
always coming into the equation. Mathematics is
right.
more universal,
It's
right?
more
You're
universal,
dealing with
right,
numbers,
right,
so
and less words,
right, right,
oftentimes,
right,
a lot
right.
less words, and so just making sure that again, we're not just looking at data as numbers, but we're looking at data in terms of how individual students perform. When I do data presentations with school leaders,
Mm-hmm.
you're always going to see a slide that literally names students. It may not be their respective students,
Mm-hmm.
but at some point, we always have to bring the data to the level of the individual student. I don't want to,
Absolutely.
data to me isn't numerical. It's not
Well, it's attached to a
numerical.
body. It's attached to a
Yeah,
body.
it is. It is. It is. The report might be numerical, but in terms of the data, you have to get that down to, Johnny. Like you have to get that data to that level and start looking specifically at the student. And
Mm.
the other part is data should not always be academic. If you have a chance, there's a book called Street Data. It's gaining a bit of popularity in the educational circles, but
Mm.
they almost dismiss academic data and they're saying get into the data that speaks specifically to a student's lived experiences.
Mm.
And
Mm.
I mean, and let me go one step further. They believe, talking about sustainability,
Uh,
they believe so much in their book that they are now going into school districts and
okay.
they're PDing around, providing PD around how to specifically look at data specific to, like I said, a student's lived experiences.
Right.
And
Right. Right.
unapologetic, they force you on different levels, your biases, your racial biases, they force you to look at yourself,
Mm.
and
Mm.
what biases as a white woman, what are you attaching to these students that you don't even realize that you're doing? You know,
Mm.
uh, it's on that level, yeah. So,
Okay. Okay.
so
But that's
when
interesting because that
yeah.
I'm sorry, that brings us into the conversation around equity, right? So
Mhm,
equity and
mhm,
access, right? How can
mhm,
schools
mhm.
ensure that supports are distributed fairly and
Yeah,
actually reach the scholars who need it the most,
yeah,
right? So when
yeah.
we start talking about these programs, equity is also
Mhm.
at the heart of this, right? So you're looking at
Exactly.
data, as you said, the
Mhm.
report are numbers. The report is based on numbers, right? The
Yeah,
school
yeah.
overall, you did this, you did that, you did that. When we start getting into the granular elements of it, now we have to attach
Mhm,
it to Kwame. We have to attach it to Tina. What does Kwame
mhm.
need so that he can
Yeah,
measure up? What does Tina need so that either she's measuring up or exceeding, right? So those dynamics always come into the equation. And so when we start
yeah.
talking about equity, you know,
Mhm.
uh, what would be challenges for underserved populations in terms of funding, cultural responsiveness? What comes to mind when that pops into the equation?
So, the word all,
Mm.
school systems are supposed to be supporting all students.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say this in this high stakes testing environment, we
Yes.
forget that it's about all students. Sometimes we approach curriculum instruction assessment data from a deficit mindset.
Mm.
Oh, we're going to focus on the cusp students. We're going to focus on these lower tiers. No, all of the students need you, right? And so that equity conversation, particularly in urban centers, it's become such a heavy focus on
Mm.
this low middle. Not even your low students, because the belief is, oh, they can't get us our scores. You
Right.
know,
Right.
definitely
Right.
on the higher performing students, because we hear things like, oh, we'll sit them in a group next to the other students and let them teach. No, as a student who's performing on level, it is not my job to teach my peers. It's just not my job to do that.
Yeah,
Not my job.
that
They can pay, you know. They are not getting
like,
paid for
yeah, you
that.
guys, you when you need help, go to Susan and them at their table,
Absolutely not.
and they'll help you out, right? And so these are
Right,
some of the
right.
challenges. And so when we start looking at cultural responsiveness, we start looking at
Yeah.
equity, we start looking at, you know, funding to support. And you are absolutely correct. As a former
Mm-hmm.
principal of a priority school, right? When we
Mm-hmm.
did
Mm-hmm.
our initial data assessment, okay, we identified this cohort of scholars, and so they became the primary focus. By the
Mm-hmm.
end of year one, we realized why we were so busy focusing on this group, that group was starting to suffer or fall behind.
Absolutely.
The group that should
Mm-hmm.
have been taking us to the moon, they started. So it's like, okay, all right, we're going to focus heavily on them, but we are also going to make sure that we provide some additional support to those scholars who are either below that group or above that group to make sure that they're equally transitioning and
Mm-hmm.
moving in the right direction. So that's a process. That's a process.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I think you touched on this, that uh, how many people are involved, right? Not just
Mm.
teachers, but
Mm-hmm.
families and the community organizations too, because it can't just be left to practitioners at the school site. And I know oftentimes schools kind of take over that responsibility. It's only our job to make sure that Kwame, who's not on par, we got to get him on par. But we do it
Yeah.
absent mom and dad, grandma, whoever the guardian of record is, right? We do it
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
absent, heck, the pastor, the church, right? And the question becomes, how do we do a better job of infusing those entities into the conversation when we're trying to get Kwame on par, when we're trying to get Kwame to make sure that he's doing what he needs to do? What would be an advice that you can share with us, or some strategies you think we can look at as an institution to make sure that the school is not the sole entity, right? We said it takes a
Yeah.
village. So if it's taking a village, let's make sure that all elements, as we call them, stakeholders, are part of the
Mm-hmm.
conversation to ensure that Kwame is moving in the right direction, that Kwame is doing what he needs to do to make sure that he's meeting the challenges ahead of him. What
Yeah.
would you say to the institutions or to the people in the landscape of our field, how to best incorporate those individuals into the process?
Yeah. So I'll even start with this. So often we are all year we're gearing our students up for state testing.
Mm,
Everything is about that state test that happens early May, right?
right.
And then the students take the test, then they go to the next grade, and then I'll ask them, what was your score last year? They have no idea. We have omitted the student. We've engaged them all year with regards to
Mm-hmm.
gearing them up, and then we disconnected from them when the score comes out, right?
Mm,
So I thought we were doing it for them, right? So
right.
so I say that to say, we have to do a better job of being more deliberate in bringing in the student and the family, and that's okay. And just reality. A lot of times we're not always contacting parents for good things. It's usually when a need arises, right?
When Kwame's wilding out in class and
I'm
acting the
in the
fool.
background while I'm out, right? So and parents will kind of gradually disconnect, and but if
Mm,
we are good, bad, or indifferent, if we're enlisting and engaging parents, I mean, and honestly, a
mm-hmm,
definite starting point is, let me, as a teacher, as a school, I just want to show you what our school is about,
mm-hmm.
right? When you're buying a new home, you're checking out every aspect of it, right? So,
Yep,
so as a school entity with these students coming to you, they're your clients, your customers.
absolutely.
Are we exposing to the parents? This is all that's happening for this child this year. That was definitely something we did at the STEM Academy. There were orientations that started the year, and it's
Mm-hmm,
not just like a back to school night. It is seriously saying, this is what your child is going to experience this year. This is
mm,
how you support. This is, and then we did goal setting with our students, right?
mm,
And
mm.
bringing the parents into, well, these are the academic goals that we co-crafted with your child, and this is something that we're going to monitor throughout the year, and we're going to engage you in that process as we're monitoring throughout the year. So I think recognizing that the strength of the families and the parents and the student in just the entire learning process, not just when there's like an emergency. So
Right,
I think that's part of the battle. And a lot of your ethnic diverse communities where language can be a barrier, there's cultural barriers.
absolutely,
Um, it's hard when they are getting bad news about their child, and they'll shut down. They'll
absolutely,
turn. So,
absolutely.
and those are cultural distinctions. Like maybe the American families are a little bit more receptive or whatever, but some of these, they take a lot of pride in the teacher, like
Oh, listen,
and
teachers are
respect
revered.
teacher.
Okay, teachers are
Yes,
revered outside of. I'm going to say it may be controversial,
yes,
but teachers are revered outside of the U.S. Right, and
they
so and
they
so
are.
when we deal with our international families, that is
Mm-hmm,
the one
mm-hmm.
thing that we have to do a better job of making sure that we
Yeah,
make those connections. But also going
yeah.
back,
Mm-hmm.
teaching scholars to take ownership of their learning, right? And I think that's the
Absolutely.
point you were alluding to. You know, we
Mm-hmm.
do all the we engage them throughout the year, but we don't help them learn how to take ownership of that learning. Because once they
Yeah.
take ownership of learning, you're not going to be
Mm-hmm.
able to stop them because they can see, okay, I need to make this adjustment. They will self-regulate with respect to that. And I think in our urban centers, and I have to go
Mm-hmm.
that route because that's where I spent my career. The dynamics of how things are structured makes it so challenging to really do a yeoman's job of getting scholars to really take ownership. And so, with respect to that, what are some things that, from your experience, you think we
Mm.
can do a better job of doing to engage
Oh,
scholars in a way that allows them to see that they are in control of their learning? Because but that's also going to require a whole lot of training of the adults who are in front of them leading the charge.
I I recommend a strategy, right? You have to give students a mirror, a window, and a door.
Okay, speak
The
on it.
mirror, the mirror is where you let students see themselves. They develop their own individual identities.
Mm-hmm.
So creating environments where students can develop pride in who they are,
Mm-hmm.
and they develop those abilities, those executive functions and things like that, that just over time strengthen their organizational skills. They have to develop their own identity, right?
Okay.
And a positive identity. The window is how students see others, right? They're
Mm.
looking outside of themselves, how they see others. There's a need to have a healthy respect for each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
So teach students how to respect others through that window. The door is when you unite, right? So the door is that idea of I have my own individual identity.
Mm-hmm.
I have a healthy respect for those who may not look like me or behave or perform like me. But now, in terms of that door, I'm also seeing my civic responsibility.
Mm.
I don't care if it's a social studies class or a math class.
Right.
That's something that applies to all. So in terms of just you know just the answer to that question, just you have to, as a teacher, as a parent, always be conscientious of that. When we tell our teachers, give students projects to do, it's not just that they're doing a long assignment, right? The idea, the idea of the project is that you're incorporating, like I said, that civic responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Students applying all of this stuff that they learned in these four walls to the outside,
Mm.
and being change agents and difference makers. You know, where that falls apart, you end up with selfish individuals. You know, you end up with non-reflective
Mm.
individuals.
Mm.
So
And
I
eventually
feel,
they all become adults.
and they become selfish adults. They become non-reflective adults. You know, the blame is always someone
It's
else's. They
somebody
don't
else's fault, but not me, right? Yeah.
right, can't be me. You know, or even like I said, you we forget to share the scores with the students.
Right.
So they don't own even their own performance and their ability to do better the next year. They have no idea. So, and I think that's I think that's disrespectful. I think there was, this was a true story. There was a student, I had also agreed to, in this one particular district, to work with some individual students. I work with 25 students,
Mm-hmm.
and directly working with them.
Okay.
And this one student, he was on the basketball team, and his coach told him, like, you better get your grades up,
Mm.
and he wanted him to, just to do well or whatever. And so the student really buckled down because he
Mm.
wanted to do, and I saw the difference just in his affect. And so this student was kind of like a middle of the road student.
Right.
I wasn't sure how he would do on that NJSLA. I wasn't sure. I had confidence, but I wasn't sure. And he outperformed his entire class.
Get out.
Like he had the highest score, the highest growth points, I should say, and
Right.
passed his entire class. And so the following year, I see him just outside hanging out with his friends, and I was like, congratulations. And he said, on what? I said, did you see your score? And he said, no. He didn't even know. He didn't
Wow.
know that all that effort and energy that he put, and taking the advisement of his coach,
Mm-hmm.
he didn't know. So
And
again,
that's
we
and
we,
that's sad, right? So one of the things that, on occasion, when I was in the mix, we try to do
mm,
is have these data chats with scholars, right?
mhm.
Have these data chats with scholars. Let them see where they fall on the spectrum with respect to their performance, right? Because if they
Yeah.
don't get to see it, then it's like you asking me to do extra this and do that assignment, and for what? What's the benefit, right? Because I
Mhm.
don't see where that's being measured or where that's counting against anything, right? But when you can have
Mhm.
these conversations with scholars and let them see, and then allow them to set goals, because we used to let them not only have the data chats but also set goals along with them. Like, what would you do differently, or what do you think you need to do differently to help you move
Yeah.
to the next level, right? Because every
Mhm.
incremental step is helpful. But once they begin to
Absolutely.
start looking at data for themselves and go, ooh,
Mhm.
wait, I was supposed to be there and I'm down here.
Mhm.
One, it
Mhm.
might be a
Mhm.
painful reality for them to come to terms with, but
Yeah.
it allows them to say, okay, you know what? Hey, in back of their mind, they might begin the process of saying, you know what? I could do better than this. The teacher has so much
Yeah.
confidence in me. I'm the one that's holding me back sometimes, and so It's critically important that scholars get to one, see and know their data, and have
Mm-hmm.
let's have that conversation. Those data chats are critically important because
They are.
ultimately they measure the school as an entity in terms of where we fall in these rankings. I'm not a fan of all those things, but that's the system. That's the system.
I wanna throw this out on that note super quick. The scholars at the STEM Academy, again, these were ninth, 10th, 11th, 12th graders. At a moment's notice, because we were cell phone friendly, at least at this point in time, we taught students to use a cell phone responsibly. It wasn't a
Mm-hmm.
punishment to have it, if they had it. At any moment in time, if we said, pull your phone out and tell me what your grade is in ELA. They had to be able to do that. They had to know how to navigate that app
Mm.
and tell us the grade. And usually they knew it, right? To be honest with you, as a part of even when they were applying to the STEM school, as a part of the application process, um, we may have a scholar that aced, the state assessments, but their
Mm-hmm.
grades were last. And so, yeah, we want to accept you, but you have to explain why you have a C in science.
Mm.
And pull your
Mm.
phone out and look at your first, second, third, your marking period grades and explain if you want to be a part of this,
Mm-hmm.
why do you have science? And so we're setting the tone at that moment.
Nice.
See,
Nice.
not good enough, not good enough, not good
Right.
enough, not good enough. And that you should see them squirm a bit. Like, I had a rough, marking period, and I want to do. I promise I'll do better. Okay, but I could also see that you missed 9 assignments, so
Mm.
you're going to be that kid who comes here missing. So
Right.
again, building in that accountability, like it
And
doesn't
that is
always
critical.
take an.
That's
Yeah,
critical.
yeah.
That's real critical. And I love that. I love that you guys did that. Now the question is, how
Mhm,
do we replicate that across
mhm,
multiple schools, multiple districts, and basically across the landscape? Looking at,
mm,
wraparound services and building trust and all of these elements. Once schools have made the investment in these supports,
mhm,
right? The $1 million question: how do we know
mhm.
they're working? How do we know they're working?
Because I said so. No,
Oh, okay, okay, Doc. Because you said so, therefore
no,
it is. Huh?
it is right. It is. But seriously, if you wait until the end of the implementation to measure results, you've already failed.
Mm,
So
mm.
so
Please say that again. Please say that again, because I think
if
that needs to be heard
you
one more again.
if you wait until the end of the implementation to measure your results, you've already failed.
Mm,
You've already failed. So any program that's worth its weight, you should have a built-in progress monitoring system
mm.
defined throughout. Throughout.
Nice.
You don't wait until the ship is already sunk to, So
Oh,
yeah, I think that progress monitoring, and I
mm-hmm.
know that's like a catchword, or catchphrase, but it's critical. And actually taking the temperature, however you're defining that initiative, it could be
Right.
academic data, it could be anecdotal data, but however you're taking the temperature of that initiative from start to finish,
Mm-hmm.
that's your winning strategy. And I am firm on monitoring implementation.
Okay.
I do like to work with districts on, and it's funny, people say like, oh, we overtest our students. Okay, use those assessments then,
Mm-hmm.
like pull in those results and look at them across the year. If you're the tutoring, for example, we had 3 touch points throughout the year where we looked at the data of the students. We also surveyed students. We surveyed the tutors. It was just an ongoing process,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and there was no secret, or there was no mystery to how students were doing, because we tracked that throughout the course, and we didn't just track it. We made adjustments along the way. We made
As
adjustments
as
along the
one
way.
should, as one should.
Mhm.
So when you say that, right? And you just
Mm-hmm.
made the comment about, oh, we test our kids too much, which is not a
Mm-hmm.
lie. It's not a lie.
Yeah, it's true.
But
It's
we
true.
need to
Mm-hmm.
be, I think, the overall system, and I don't, so again, I can only speak to the lived experience, right? Being in an urban center where resources, the state is the one driving your financial support, and da 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 da, da, right? The list goes on and on and on.
Mm-hmm.
The assessments can be, whoo,
Yes,
overwhelming,
I agree.
overwhelming, and so of
I
course it
agree.
can be exhausting. How
Yep.
can we be more strategic,
Yep.
right? And assessing and making those adjustments that need to be made following the right.
Yeah.
So, like we need to be more strategic in that process
Yeah.
because I don't think every
Yeah.
assessment that comes across the radar needs to be given to our scholars, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
they're not just doing the district assessments, you have the state assessments, and then in addition, you also
Teachers
have your
assessment.
classroom assessments that go on.
Mm-hmm.
It can be
Mm-hmm.
overwhelming. And so, how do
Yeah.
we, one, strategically
Yeah.
use strategically use assessment to help move the needle without it being overwhelming in the way that I think it currently is. I still think
Yeah.
it's a lot.
It's too much. It's too much. I'll say it metaphorically, right? If if my clothes are fitting looser, I don't have to keep getting on the scale, right? And so I think we over-test because we don't have other measures in place that don't require that assessment to see how Johnny is doing.
Mhm.
So in an ideal world, instruction, curriculum assessment, it's one through line. It's the same thing. When you look at the philosophies for kindergarten and early childhood, they say the assessment is built into instruction.
Mhm.
You don't need a separate occurrence of an assessment to test a kindergarten child because everything you do every day is assessing that child.
Right.
We have to develop those systems for those upper grades too, where the instruction is the assessment. It
Mm.
is the assessment. It means that I have to be super keen and keyed into
Right.
hearing the thinking of students. And if I'm up there doing all the talking, right, and
Mm.
not creating to hear students, or I put watch this, right? This is going to upset folks. If I keep putting my students in groups where the student who may be the quieter or less strong student becomes a victim of groupthink, where the
Mm.
stronger students are answering questions and guiding the understanding, and that student doesn't have time to think for themselves, you don't hear the student.
Right.
So I think in the most ideal setting, the instruction is the assessment. You are building in all of those mechanisms
Mhm.
to be able to hear, document, and think about just the way that your students are thinking. And sometimes it is really just a matter of, I'm not doing small group instruction today. I am working with Kwame today. That's it, right?
Right.
Instead of pulling 4 students, I'm just pulling Kwame
Right.
because he gave me an answer today in class that I wasn't too sure about. So I want to correct his thinking on the spot. So you have to, as a teacher, have those flexible formats, planned flexible formats. And I want to throw this out too. I hate that notion of we do, you do, I do. I hate that. I hate it, right? Because I don't even say what, but like I definitely prefer the format that you see more in like special education settings, where the small group is the bulk of the time is spent in the small group, right?
So your challenge,
Yeah.
though, you know what's going to come with that commentary, right?
What's that?
Management. I can't do
Yeah.
any of that when I have
Yeah.
25 kids. I'm by
Mm-hmm.
myself, and
Mm-hmm.
these kids ain't listening to me. And I'm using the word ain't. They ain't listening to me. They're
Yeah.
talking
Yeah.
back. I can't even
Yeah.
begin to teach. So how do
Yeah.
I create that environment, right? where
Yeah. Yeah.
this manifestation of this ideal element is even
Mhm.
possible, right? So these are the
Mhm.
challenges that we tend to have to deal with, and it's not the fault of the practitioner, right?
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
systemically we have a serious, there needs to be a rethinking of the educational structure, personally. Kwame's opinion,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And I don't know that the system is ready to pivot from what is currently in place, right? To be
Yeah.
able to allow us to meet scholars where they are meaningfully,
Yeah.
right? And so, while what you're saying, we push it. I've tried to push it. I have colleagues
Mhm.
who've tried to push it,
Mhm.
and it's the devil is in the details and the situation, right?
Mhm.
So I'm a
Mhm.
novice teacher. I have
Yeah.
25 kids
Yeah.
who, depending on who I am, they probably scared the bejesus out of me. So now I'm making all kinds of compromises just to get them to just
Mhm.
sit still, behave, so I can even begin the process of teaching. So there's some dynamics
Mhm.
at play that I'm definitely going to have a conversation with someone, maybe you at another time, to really kind of dig
Mhm.
into that aspect, because I think it's an overlooked aspect of the field. And so when we start looking at that, I'm like, ooh, all the great things that we know will work, we've seen it work in pockets, right? How do we replicate? How do we move it into the larger um, arena, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that's where
Mhm.
the challenge lies, because when you get into the larger arena, the dynamics are not the same.
I know. I
The
know.
dynamics
I
are
know.
not the same. So, as a former classroom teacher, that which you two are, right? If you're not a
Mhm.
practitioner who has a strong foundation and getting with your
Yeah.
kids and understanding them, getting them to do what you need them to do, what we're
Mhm.
talking about is like foreign language to you,
I know. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's a foreign
Yeah.
language, and it's unfortunate. However,
Uh,
we're not going
yeah.
to we're not going to give up on that possibility of
No,
hope,
no.
right?
And you know what? Again, in those systems, right?
Mm-hmm.
In those systems where as an administrator, you have thought about the fact that in this year, I'm going to get, let's just say, two brand new teachers fresh out of college, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, how have you developed systems to support them in a really concrete way? You may want to start that first year, if possible, and give
Mm-hmm.
them a lighter schedule. In other cultures, Japan, for example, they teach half day and they PD the other half of the day. They don't veer from that, right?
Mm.
And so that's a system because they value pouring into teachers.
Right.
So if you have a first year teacher, right, and it's almost documented knowledge that they're going to struggle with classroom management.
Absolutely.
How do you set them up for success? So you give them a modified schedule. You give them a schedule that may allow another mentor teacher to come in. That teacher has a duty, and then the new teacher has the class. And so now that mentor can support that teacher every day of the week, right?
Mm.
Or that new teacher during their off time, they can push in and co-teach and learn from that stronger teacher. But you don't leave them out there by themselves,
So,
especially with that seventh grade group of students.
and the seventh grade, that's that middle child. That's the ooh,
We
ooh. I don't
all
care.
know that seventh grade. We all know that seventh
Look,
grade.
I love middle school. That was my arena. But them children, them
Mhm.
churn. Whoo.
Those
Sixth
seventh
grade,
graders.
you're somewhat saying. Eighth grade
Yes,
is
yes,
like a
yes,
different person,
yes,
but seventh grade,
yes.
true
That
middle
seventh
child
grade.
syndrome, like you, ooh
Oh
boy.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Right.
Yes,
So
yes,
what you
yes.
just articulated,
Mhm,
Doc, is so beautiful,
mhm.
but right, and that's the challenge. But
Yeah, yeah.
the system currently in place
Mm-hmm.
I don't, unless a district decides to go against the grain and do something completely, you know, off the beaten path to
Yeah.
make that happen, that is
Mm-hmm.
so not going to be in
Mm-hmm.
place. You know, we can have some aspects of it, but that is not,
Mm-hmm.
you know, so just the thought of, okay, you're coming in for a half day, you're going to teach, we're going to PD, that's, that's a chef's kiss on that,
I
right?
know.
But
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
reality is, first of all, practice schools are struggling to get teachers in, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're struggling to
Mm-hmm.
retain them, or when they get them, they're
Mm-hmm.
struggling to retain them. So there's so many
Mm-hmm.
elements and factors at play that what you and I see as, oh, that would be awesome, that would be so, right? That's really not what's
Mm-hmm.
coming into the equation, all right? And I
Yeah.
think, again, education in and of itself, as your company name says, needs to be reimagined
Mm-hmm.
now, right?
Yeah.
It needs to be
It does.
reimagined now because
It does.
if not, this, you know, insanity cycle that we are in, right, will
Mm-hmm.
continue, will persist. And I
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
see anything coming down the pike that gives me hope that there's a change in the structure pending, right?
I wanna throw this out. I know we're close to time,
Yep,
right?
yep.
Um, what I'm saying, and I don't think it's like a anomaly. What I'm saying happening in various school districts is they are inserting almost like a experimental site. So when you think of all these different districts, there's that new school that they created for whatever this purpose is.
Mm-hmm.
And I suggest that they use those type of environments to experiment, not on children, but to experiment with progressive formats for instruction.
Mm,
Take the boundaries away for a second, right?
mm-hmm.
And let schools potentially give these other schools, like a design that can be scaled to all of
Right,
those sites. So, you know what I mean? So these incubators, I'll call them that, these
right.
incubators,
Mm-hmm.
use them to really try out some progressive, unique designs and see if that can influence the rest of. So yeah, maybe we can't do that across the district. And I know you have teachers unions and policies. We're not breaking any of that, but we're within bounds. We're doing the things that feel a bit more progressive. Every viable company has a way to incubate ideas. Educational school systems need to be able to do the same thing.
Right. But we forget that we're also a company, right? We don't look
We
at
are
us, but we don't
right.
look at ourselves in that regard, and that's
Mm-mm.
a challenge that I think needs an element that needs to change. So I know that
Yeah.
we're close to time, and I really would love. There's a question that I saw that I think I will want us to address, but before we do
Okay.
that, can you share an
Mhm.
example where external support truly made a difference for scholars?
Yeah. So in that tutoring scenario that I told you, we had 30%, 90 students
Mm,
who were not expected to pass the state assessment. 90 students passed the state assessment.
nice.
In another district that I worked in, they, for the first time in their middle school, they outperformed the state every single grade level, grade 6, 7, 8, ELA, and mathematics.
Nice.
In another school district that I work with, they had nothing but strong gains across just about every tested area with the exception of grade 9.
Okay.
So grade 3, 4, again, across ELA and mathematics. So these types of kind of data culture, data driven environments where they have these beautiful initiatives and they're progressive in their thinking, it can make a difference for students.
So districts really have to be intentional, right? There has to be intentionality associated with programs that we're bringing in, who we're bringing in, how we're going to utilize
Mm-hmm.
their services to ensure that we are moving the needle, not just for the appearance of the school, but also moving the needle with respect to scholar growth and gain, right?
Absolutely.
And so
Absolutely.
I think you've already given us the how you will reimagine elements. But
Mm-hmm.
what final advice would you give to schools or school
Mm.
leaders looking to strengthen scholar support?
I'm gonna try to pronounce a Latin phrase that I live by. Um, Verba volant, scriptum manent, and that
Ah,
means that means words fly, but what's written remains.
yep.
So you have these great ideas, you have to write them down, indoctrinate them into practice, and as so that you're not starting from scratch every year. As the years go by, you just improve on and build off of what you've already put into writing. So I definitely ask school leaders, just make sure that these ideas become indoctrinated written part of your daily curriculum.
Cool, cool. So I want to take this one question, right? I'm going to put it
Okay.
up. Can you see it?
You know what? My screen is fuzzy, so I can't read it
Okay,
at
so
all.
it says, how does your model for scholar success support teachers'
Mhm.
resilience in the midst of these
Mm,
challenges within the
mm.
system? And that's from Ms.
Wow.
Rivera. Thank you
Oh,
for
I love it.
tuning
I
in.
love it. I love it.
Yeah.
So how do we build up our teachers and support their ability to be motivated and come in every day and work with our students? Um, I'm I'm gonna I'm gonna go back to something I learned, Mr. Kwame, in our doctoral program, Bowman and Deal. Right?
Ooh, you going there? Okay.
I went there. Super quick, if I can rattle it off and remember it. When you are facing a need for change, you have to look at change through four frames of leadership.
Mm.
That is the structural frame, the
Mm-hmm.
political frame, the human resource frame, and that final frame is a symbolic frame. The
Symbolic.
symbolic frame is where you address the culture of your building. You celebrate successes, you celebrate the wins, you celebrate your teachers. And I think a lot of times, again, in this high stakes testing environment, we kind of forget that we have to build each other up and build community. Culture should not just happen. That's when it gets reckless.
Mm.
Culture has to be built. It has to be built, intentionally built. So I definitely say, take those opportunities to honor that symbolic frame where you are telling stories and building meaning, celebrating your staff, celebrating your students, and just keeping that spirit of being progressive and collaborative, like keeping that alive and well. So that's my best advice for that.
No, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And when you said culture has to be built, let's also remind folks culture is not the sole responsibility of the principal and the vice principal.
Mm,
It is the responsibility of the collective.
love
Everybody
it.
has a role in this in helping establish the culture that we collectively want to be a part of. So I just wanted to just hit that
I
portion
love
real
that.
quick. All right.
Absolutely.
Dr.
Absolutely.
Tina
Absolutely.
Powell, you
Yes, sir.
rocked with us. So, as
I,
my folks, my game changers, as you can see, we are not in our studio. A whole different background. We're still in the Maple Leaf 51st state,
yeah, yeah.
right? But I want to let's wrap this up. I want to thank you so much for being a part of this. That wraps up today's conversation on external scholar support and the ways schools can leverage partnership programs and innovation to expand learning opportunities. A special thank you to my guest, Dr. Tina Powell. So
Thank
again,
you.
somebody I'm familiar with. All right, we're both
Hmm.
part of Seton Hall alums, so just wanted to throw
Yeah.
that out. And thank you for sharing your insights, experiences, and passion for reimagining education. What we've learned
Thank
today
you.
is clear. Thank you. What we've learned today is clear. When schools intentionally design systems that go beyond the classroom, they create powerful pathways for equity, engagement, and scholar success. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to the At the Desk with Dr. Qua so you never miss future conversations. And I'd love to hear from you. What supports have you made what supports have made the biggest difference for scholars in your community? Until next time, stay inspired, stay intentional, and always remember transformation begins with conversation. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate you. Until the next episode, peace. Thank you, Doc.
Thank you.